Hey friends, so coming to you in my favorite place here, my bed. Hey, I'm a projector. I do some of my best work in bed. Just saying. But yeah, thinking about the chakras and doing energy reads as I usually do. And you know that verse in the Bible that talks about the love of money as the root of all evil? Well, there might be some truth to that leads to the chakras, actually. Now, I've had a lot of experience with reading people's energy and looking at how it ties to their life, and it's been really interesting. In the last day, I've read 3 people who all had an overactive solar plexus. And according to my chart that I've put together here, the overactive solar plexus is about being overly ambitious, potentially dominant or overconfident, cocky. But there can be different meanings for different people based on what that overly ambitious drive leads them towards. So, for instance, one woman that I was reading in the past was a slave, and she had 7 children, and her husband died. Well, slave might be a strong word. She was technically free, but yeah, she didn't have a very good job. She was in the ghetto and slaving right away for some white people that she was living in the back garage, their back garage. So, I mean, basically a slave. Anyways, that aside, she didn't have any of those other, like, domination or overconfidence, because her motivation, her being very motivated, did not end in her making a lot of money. Perhaps her situation had something to do with it. So I was thinking, though, if she was, a man in a good situation with a decent job that he had gotten from being ambitious, what would inevitably happen is it would end up in having a decent amount of money. And if you have a decent amount of money, what is the tendency there? You tend to get pretty confident. Confidence tends to end up in arrogance. And you think money defines you. So there's a strong correlation with an overactive solar plexus and being cocky. But these days, being overly ambitious and having 3 jobs, say, for instance, does not guarantee you getting a lot of money, because the economy is bad. We're practically back to slavery times. So you can kind of scratch overconfident and dominant for a lot of people that just don't have the potential if they're not using their brains, for instance, and their bodies are about 20% of their potential for having success. 80% is from your neck up. Basically, if you use your brain and you have a intelligent brain, then that's where you're going to be successful. Only because of that. So if a person who's overly ambitious is not getting in a position that makes them the boss, they're not dominant, they're probably not going to be overconfident, and they're going to be poor. But they're still trying really, really hard. That's unfortunate. So on the other side, you have your solar plexus is blocked, and you are feeling controlled, worried, stuck, insecure, impatient. And these things tend to happen when you're in a bad financial state, when you're working for other people that are holding you back, that kind of thing. Most people fluctuate from closed or blocked in their life to overactive when they get a really good job or something like that. But here's the thing. All of that is going to lead to financial problems or financial, usually having a lot of money. So it could look like, a person that is very dominant and maybe really wealthy and ambitious is going to do a lot of bad things. Perhaps it will lead them to do some bad things. But just as much, if you go on the other side to the feeling controlled, everybody's out to get me, stuck, insecure, you're going to have a lot of problems with that. And if you go even worse than that, you're going to just not have any motivation. You're not going to want to get off the couch, just feel terrible. And also your self-worth basically is shot. You have no motivation, and you tend not to have any trust in yourself and fellow man. So you can see why the solar plexus balanced is so important, because everything comes from there. If you have a mass murderer, they're going to have no self-worth, or they're going to be overconfident and cocky. It's one of the two. They're never going to have that solar plexus balanced where they're trusting and having good self-worth and good motivation. It's just impossible to be a bad person with that. Everything stems from that. The literal root of all evil is not having good self-worth, trust, and motivation. So, is the Bible right? Sort of, kind of. Because they would associate money with an out of balance solar plexus. But that's only half of the story, because that's only overactive. Interestingly enough, though, an overactive solar plexus, which some would even say is like narcissistic behavior, is actually just a mask for probably a childhood trauma that made you feel like you weren't worth anything. A lot of people who try to dominate others with degrees or with money, in their childhood, they felt like absolute shit. They were either really poor, or their parents didn't pay any attention to them because they were very motivated and wealthy. And so they're trying to do the same thing to get their parents' attention and to prove that they're something, but they really have really bad self-worth. And so they're trying to overcompensate for it. A lot of times what I see with people that are really insecure and they're having that feeling like they're always going to be controlled, well, they tend to go to the other side, and I'm going to make up for that by, say, being a bodybuilder. Well, that doesn't fix the problem. It only masks it. So then you have a really insecure person with a lot of muscles going around trying to beat up people to show that they're all that. And they're still carrying that same energy. So, they walk through a ghetto all overconfident and everything. And maybe they even have a vicious dog by their side or a gun on their hip. Well, people are going to look at them like, that guy needs to be taken down a peg. Even though, obviously he's very intimidating and it's going to take a whole gang of them to do it. They're going to see him in the same light as somebody who needs to be taken out. And so the very thing that the person was trying to avoid by getting really defensive is the thing he's drawing to him, because it's an imbalance one way or another, overactive or underactive. So you need to live in confidence and trust and feeling like you are worth being a person. I mean, it's not a difficult thing. If you're alive, you are worth being alive. When you die, that obviously changes. Selection. I mean, I really don't think anybody should not have self-worth that is alive. Unless, of course, you are a complete parasite and you can't in any way keep yourself alive. And then, yeah, you probably will have trust issues, whether the person's going to keep you alive. You'll probably have, self-worth issues. Yeah, so really, ultimately, in order to have good motivation and good self-worth, you have to be constantly trying to be as independent as you can. Now, that's not necessarily about money. Sometimes that's about just networking and helping people so that they can help you. Sometimes that's about just being more sustainable and bringing down your bills. There's a lot of different ways to be having good self-worth, taking care of your body. But it's not going to come if you're not doing the steps to have a good self-worth either. So it's kind of tricky, but I think that our mindset should always be, when we wake up in the morning, jump out of bed and do what we can do to have good self-worth. If that's dressing up, if that's, talking to people that are building us up, good, great. Don't surround yourself with people that are beating you down or that are patting you on the back when, frankly, you should be kicked in the rear. There are a lot of people in the world that just try to pander, and ultimately that's not going to help your self-worth, because then you're not changing, you're not growing, you're not doing what ultimately you need to do in order to feel good about yourself. You're 50 pounds overweight. Well, you know what? You need that friend who's going to say, hey, you want to go to the gym with me? Or, hey, do you need any help learning how to cook so you don't eat out every day? Or whatever. There are friends that will help us, and then there are friends that will enable us. So, I mean, I want to be the kind of friend that kicks you in the rear because I like those kind of friends. So, yeah. But ultimately, only because it does actually make me feel better in the end. So start your morning off with maybe a guided meditation for the solar plexus. Maybe a little yoga focusing on your solar plexus. Think about this too. The solar plexus got its name from the sun, sun. And the sun is the center of our solar system. It's kind of obvious, And in the same way, I truly believe that the solar plexus is the most important chakra of them all, because everything starts there. That's why, the Bible verse is sort of kind of right about it being the root of all evil to not to love it, because yes, it is connected to your self-worth and all that, but it goes so much deeper than that. So just think of how the solar system all revolves around, and the chakras are kind of like the solar system, although not the same exact amount. Really, nobody has an exact amount of the chakras. There's lots of major and minor ones, so just ignore that part. But this solar plexus is like our sun. Everything revolves around it. If you don't have your self-worth, you've got nothing. So do what you got to do to feel good in the morning and all day, and you're going to be in a good place. Yeah, if that sounds selfish to you, let it be. You need to first take care of yourself before you can take care of anybody else. It's kind of like being on a plane and they say, put your own mask on and then other people's. Yeah, that's life in general. Take care of yourself, worry about others next. And that is a hard lesson for a projector in particular, but I've learned it so you can learn it too. Just some thoughts for the day.